Hello my lovelies and welcome back to my channel. My name is Maya, and for this video I'm going to be showing you guys and telling you guys about all the books I read in the fall. I honestly got through a lot more books than I thought I would get through because if you remember, I was in a really bad reading slump for a while. Before I dive too deep into the books, I just wanted to mention that, or bring attention to the fact that I've just been seeing some new people on my channel or watching my videos. And for a while at first it was just family members and friends who watch my videos and support me. But I've been seeing some new faces and just people who are taking their time to comment, and I just want to say that I really appreciate it, and I'm just so happy that I'm bringing in more people. I was so worried about starting this channel for the longest, and I always told myself that the right people will find me, and I feel that that's kind of starting to happen now, and I'm just so happy about that because I just want to bring comfort to people and just bring good videos and joy to people the same way that my favorite YouTubers bring to me. So if you are new here, then you should definitely comment, and I will definitely comment back, and thank you so much for being here. Okay, so back to the books. Something that I decided I wanted to do when I first started this channel, especially when it comes to books, is that I don't want to stress myself out with reading. For one, I don't want to feel forced to read. I just want it to just gradually happen for me, and I realized that it's probably easier for me to do reading wrap-ups and reading TBRs for the seasons instead of doing monthlies, because I feel that if I do monthlies it will just stress me out a little too much, and then also just doing a video each month for every book I read is kind of just doesn't sound appealing, but only because I feel that when it's a month I probably only get through probably 3 books, and I'm like, why set up a whole video just to get through 3 books? So yeah, as of right now, I just want to split them up into seasons. For fall, I consider fall to be not even August. September, October, November. November just ended, so now that November's over, I'm gonna do my fall TBR right now, show you the books I read, talk about some of the books, maybe do some videos in between, and then for winter I consider December, January, February, and December just started. So I will do the same thing I'm doing for fall for the winter. So expect some winter book videos to start coming out in the beginning and then also at the very end of winter. If you also recall, I started my fall reading TBR kind of late because I was finishing off the Hunger Games series, and I started my fall TBR and made that TBR jar video kind of really late into the season. So the amount of books I did get through, I'm very happy about. So let's just jump into the books. I also want to preface that I have a lot of the books physically with me, and then some of them I don't have with me, so I'll put up pictures of those books that I don't have with me right now. Starting off, of course, we're going to mention the Hunger Games, and specifically only mention them because I do not want to talk about these books at all in this video. I did a whole long video talking about them so much, but I have to mention them because I did read some of it in the fall. I would say this one I definitely did not read during the fall, but these two I did read during the fall. I was only 2 chapters into Catching Fire when I started reading it again after finally forcing myself out of my reading slump. But like I said, I'm not going to talk much about these at all because I've just rambled on about them so much, and I'm kind of tired of talking about them. Not because they weren't good, they were incredible. I love these books, I love this series, but it's just time to move on, honestly. I rated the first book 5 stars, Catching Fire 5 stars, and then Mockingjay 4 stars. Next. All the rest of the books in this video are books that I specifically myself picked for my fall TBR. Also, I forgot to mention that I am using my book journal for this video. I'm just looking through the pages to help me recollect my thoughts, recollect what I rated the books. I showed you guys this book journal in my last book video, which was me getting out of a reading slump, and I will say it again, this book is so helpful and I love it so much. The first 3 books are books that I picked for the reading slump video, if you remember, and then the rest of the books are books that I picked from my fall TBR jar. I will preface that I did not get through every single book in my fall TBR that I picked from the jar, unfortunately. I will show you guys which books I did read and which book I did not get to. But starting off, we have Bride by Ali Hazelwood. This book is my sister's book, so I do not have it on me right now. Also, these first 3 books that I picked from my reading slump video, I'm not going to delve too deeply into them because once again, I did talk about them a lot in that video. So if you want to check that video out, you definitely should. But I'm still going to just briefly explain what they're about and give my rating still. Bride by Ali Hazelwood was so good. I loved that book. It was definitely the perfect book to read to start getting me out of my reading slump. It was a romance. It was a werewolf vampire book. It was good for the fall, Halloween season. I don't know what she put in that book. I think I said in my reading something video, she like put crack in it because I was obsessed with it. I finished it in like 2 days. Well, this book is about Misery and her love interest Lo. Misery is a vampire and Lo is a werewolf. Her and Lo were set up in an arranged marriage. It was very political. Misery's dad was kind of like on the political side of things for the vampire council, and then Lo was the head pack leader of his pack. So they got married. They had their own specific reasons on why they needed to get married to each other or why they wanted to get married to each other. I'm not going to dive into that. I think it was very clear that Misery marrying Lo and going to the werewolf territory where she would have to like stay with him for the duration of their marriage was like a dangerous thing for her to do, but she was willing to do it because, like I said, she had her reasons. At the very beginning, it was obviously like them just sticking to the plan, staying in an arranged marriage, making sure it was very like they're just doing what they need to do. But then obviously feelings progress and you just find out things between them as a pair, and it's just so cute. I rated this book 5 stars, and the checks that I put in my book for the quick opinion of this book, I checked one of the best books I've read, pure entertainment, and guilty pleasure read, because it was definitely a guilty pleasure read. I think maybe I'll add in a quote for each book as well. One of my favorite quotes from the book was when Lo said to her, "You're not a problem, Misery, you're a privilege," because all throughout the book, there has been multiple times where she mentioned that she felt like a problem or like a burden to a lot of other people, and he said that to her. So that was really cute. And one of my favorite things about the book was the slow burn. The slow burn was so good in that book. So good. So that is the first book I read from my actually picked fall TBR. Next up is Silent Patient. Silent Patient is a psychological thriller. My sister also has this book. This book is also not physically on me, unfortunately. Silent Patient is about a clinical therapist named Theo Faber who wants to work with a patient named Alicia Berenson. Alicia Berenson is a woman who shot and killed her husband one night 6 years ago, or from like the time the story starts taking place, that happened 6 years ago. And then Theo Faber wants to start working with her. He just wants to uncover the truth of why she did what she did, but one of the biggest plots of the story is the fact that after she killed her husband, she just completely stopped speaking altogether, not a peep, not a word, for 6 years straight. So that's why it's called The Silent Patient. He, as a therapist, has always been fascinated with her case, and he just wants to figure out why she did what she did. And most of all, he wants to get her to speak again. I thought this book was really good. I rated it 4 stars. At first, I had been saying in my reading something video that it was kind of boring in the beginning, and I kind of felt like there was a lot of things going on that I was like, why do we need to read this? Why are we reading this? And then once the end happened, I was like, okay, now I understand why we needed to see that, why we needed to read that, why this plot was important. And I thought the writing of it and how everything came together was so beautifully done. It was going to be rated 3 stars, but the ending alone made me bump it up to 4 stars. It was really good, because usually I'm able to like piece together the ending of things or maybe pick up on some things, but this book I genuinely was shell-shocked. I wouldn't have never guessed the ending. So that is why it was bumped up 1 star for me. And then I checked off for the quick opinion, not what I expected. That was the only thing that I felt matched the book. One of my favorite quotes from the book was, oh, and to clarify, when I say favorite quotes, there's like a part in the book journal where it gives you an option to write favorite quotes and some of your favorite things about the book. So that's kind of why I'm saying the certain things I am about each book. One of my favorite quotes was, we're all crazy, I believe, just in different ways. But I'll give you one more. Another one I really loved was, somehow grasping at vanishing snowflakes is like grasping at happiness, a tiny light surrounded by darkness. The quote was actually a lot longer, but I had to chop it up into my favorite lines. But I remember that quote being so good in the book. Anyway, that scene always just stands out to me. That's why I mentioned the quote. Highlights and things I loved about the book, the ending. I loved the ending. And I would say the writing style of it. Next one up is Heartless Hunter by Kristen Cicerelli. This was a fantasy fiction romance. And thankfully, I actually have this one physically with me right now. This one was also part of my reading something video, so once again, I'm not going to dive too deeply into it. I love this book so much. I was also obsessed with this book just as much as I was obsessed with Bride. I couldn't put it down. I stayed up late until like 4 a.m. just reading it because I could not put it down. I don't really read a lot of fantasy or romantasy, but this book really made me want to read more of that. This book is about Rune and Gideon. Rune is a witch and Gideon is a witch hunter. In like this town or place where witches are completely banned. What is the land that they're from called? There's a map in the book. It's called the New Republic, but I'm assuming that's like what they called it after they banished all of the witches. It used to be ruled by these very powerful witches, and then people took over, and Gideon was part of the people who took over. They killed them pretty much, or most of them. Just thinking about this book now is like, oh my god, it was so good. Rune and Gideon decide to court each other for like their own certain reasons. Rune kind of wants to get an insight into the soldier side and witch hunter side of things because she is like this vigilante witch who's always rescuing other witches who get captured before they're killed. So Rune wants to use Gideon for intel, and Gideon kind of hints and thinks that she is possibly the Crimson Moth, which is a witch that he's been hunting for a really long time. But obviously their love interest and the fact that they're a witch hunter and a witch is kind of like, I honestly asked myself, how's that gonna work? I said that multiple times in my reading slump video. They tried to hide their feelings, but their feelings just progressed. Another very good slow burn of a book. I rated this book 5 stars because it deserved it. At first I was gonna rate it 4 stars, then I was like, no, it deserves 5 stars. And I actually already bought the second book to read it. I just haven't read it yet because I have other books I need to read, but best believe that book is getting read very, very soon. For the quick opinion, I checked one of the best books I've read, Pure Entertainment, and then I made my own little check mark or bubble, and I said made me want to read more fantasy books. There are actually a lot of quotes from this book that I loved, so I'll read maybe a couple. Okay, he says, as if Rune within his arms was truly the only thing in the world, and until she was there again, everything was wrong. That part was so cute. I forget what part that was. Oh wait, I do know when that was happening. That was a really cute part. And then one last quote that said, she suddenly wanted all of him, body and soul. That part was so good. And then some of my favorite parts about the book, obviously I already said that I loved the slow burn between Rune and Gideon, and just honestly the really cute moments that they had between each other and the push and pull of their relationship or connection. This was a really good book. I recommend you read it. Now we're gonna get into the books that I'm definitely going to dive more deeply into because I haven't talked about these books at all on my channel. Oh my god, I forgot I read this book that I'm gonna talk about next, which is such a good reason why I had this book. So if you remember, I had made my TBR jar video. Those books I'm going to talk about, but I remember that I had read an extra book that was not part of that, and this is that book. I read Mate by Ali Hazelwood, which was the second companion book of Bride. So it's about friends or people that were in Bride or that were mentioned in Bride, and this is their book. It's Misery's best friend, actually. This book was also really, really good. I hate to compare them because like I don't like comparing things sometimes, but I will say I did like Bride just a little bit better. This was also paranormal romance like Bride. I rated it 4 stars. For the quick opinion, I checked Pure Entertainment and Guilty Pleasure Read. I don't have this book on me. I read it and then gave it right back to my sister because that's technically her book, and so was Bride. This book is about Serena and Cohen. Serena is best friends with Misery. She's her adopted sister that she grew up with. And then Cohen is the pack leader of another pack, the same way that Lo is the leader of his pack. But he's the pack leader of like another pack on like a different side of like the Wolfland. There's like a big thing in the book, or like this concept of mates. It's mainly like in the werewolf community. I'm trying to explain this without me talking too much or explaining it very confusingly. So werewolves in the book, there are certain people out there who can be their mate. And when they meet that person, it's kind of like all consuming. And it's like this really like deep connection with that other person. Wait. It's literally the same exact thing as Twilight. If you ever read Twilight, and you know I'm a huge Twilight fan, it's pretty much imprinting. It's like when the werewolves imprint on someone, like Jacob imprinted on Renesmee and everyone in his pack. Whenever they imprinted on someone, they literally just fell in love with them in some sense. And it's like an all-consuming feeling with that person, and like they have to do everything in their power to protect them and just make sure they're okay. It's kind of like this link chain feeling to them in some sense. And Cohen imprints or mates with Serena. at like the very beginning of the book. Like in the first chapter, they mention that she is his mate, but they don't do anything about it. And Cohen knows that Serena is his mate. There's never really a confirmation if Cohen is her mate. I mean, there kind of is, but I'm not going to get into that. But on his end, it was definitely like for sure that she is his mate. He's like, yeah, you're my mate, but I can't really do anything about it because in the book, there's like this thing called the Covenant where he is literally sworn to abstinence and he cannot like sleep with anyone, have feelings for anyone, and be with anyone emotionally because they think that that will affect him being a good pack leader. They kind of go their own separate ways for like a couple months, and then something happens and it brings them back together. There's like this bounty on Serena because she is a human slash were. She's like the first human slash were to be broadcasted to the rest of the world, and that kind of scares the rest of the community because as of right now, everyone is separated. There's the vampire land, werewolf land, and then human land. They're all separated, and people don't want her alive because they don't want like her being a symbol of communism between the different kinds of species. Cohen's obviously not going to let that happen. It brings them back together because then she starts living with him, and that's kind of like where I'm going to stop explaining because I don't want to spoil anything. I think you should read it. It's really good. I wrote down Cohen wants to keep her safe, although they both don't want to admit their feelings for each other. There is a pull to each other, which leads to obviously them falling in love. Like I said, this book was really good. I would say that sometimes I felt like the storyline of it was a little maybe not perfectly paced, because there were some times where I felt like it was the ending of the book and then there was still like a good chunk of the book left, and I'm like, why do I feel like things are coming to an end, but like there's still so much that needs to happen? And then when those other things would happen, I was like, okay, this feels like another end, but then it kept going. So like it kept going and going and going. Either way, the story plot was really good. It was just a really fun read. Some of my favorite quotes are, "There's only you, Serena." I put ... So I'm assuming that is like a continuation of a different quote. Ooh, one that I really liked, it said, "Surely a love this deep should be reserved for the universe as a whole." That was really cute. Some of my favorite parts about the book was the fact that Cohen was this super protective, serious, huge, tall alpha male guy, and then when it came to Serena, he was like this like lovesick teddy bear. I loved that Misery and Lo made multiple appearances in the book as well because I love them as a couple. That is not a book that I pulled from my jar or one that I picked for a video. It was just a book that I really wanted to read, and I just read it immediately once it came out. But now we can get to the books that I picked from my TBR jar. If you remember from that video, I had picked 5 books, and unfortunately I did not get through my entire list. I will tell you which book I did not get to. First up, we're going to be talking about Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I don't have this one on me. My sister took it. This is my book, but she's borrowing it right now because I recommended that she read it. Leigh Bardugo is the author of Shadow and Bone, which is a popular series that became a Netflix show. She's also the author of Six and Crows, which is a book that I loved so much. I'd never read Shadow and Bone, but Six and Crows is really good. This book is a fantasy, mystery, thriller, and also kind of like a science fiction in a sense. It was definitely like a dark academia book. It took place at Yale. What I wrote down for the summary was Galaxy. Her real name is Galaxy in the book, but everyone called her Alex. Alex Stern is given a second chance after being a sole survivor and found in an apartment where a multiple homicide took place, unsolved. After this, she is offered a second chance, a full ride to Yale, where she is tasked to work for the Lath House, which is the 9th house in the book. And that is a house that oversees 8 other societies on campus, which I will get into. There's magic, ghosts, power, and a murder homicide she has to solve, and she thinks it's connected to the 8 houses. So there's a lot to dive into for this book because there's just so many parts of the plot that are so important that I feel that I need to mention, but obviously I'm not going to spoil anything. The 9th house is a house in the book called the Lath House. I'm really hoping I'm saying that right, by the way. The Lath House, which is spelled Lethe, is a house that oversees the other 8 society houses on campus. So these houses all have their own specific powers. There's a lot of magic that ties into this book and the plot of the story. I forgot to mention that one of the reasons why Alex, was brought to Yale for a full ride was because she's able to see dead people. Or in the book, they call them grays. They call them grays, but they're pretty much just ghosts. She can see them without needing to do anything. She just naturally sees them. She's been able to see them since she's been a kid. And one of the things that you need to be able to do to be part of Lath is to see dead people or see the grays because they help protect the other societies from the Greys when they do like certain ceremonies and stuff. And to see the Greys, the people of the Lace house have to like take this elixir, but every time they take this elixir, it could like possibly kill them the more they do it. Alex doesn't need to do any of that, so that's why she got her full right there. I wish I had the book with me. I would just explain things so much better because the book has short little descriptions of what each society does. So Alex did wake up in an apartment where everyone in the apartment except for her was beaten to death. Well, Alex's friend in the book who passed away, she overdosed, and that's who she was found next to in the apartment. It wasn't solved because they couldn't figure out who did it, and they obviously didn't think she did it. They just said that the way it happened and the way things looked, like there's no way she could possibly have done it. So it was just ruled as an unsolved homicide. She wakes up in the hospital, and that's when the dean of Yale comes to find her, and he offers her the full ride to Yale. And she comes and she gets partnered with this guy named Darlington, who is like kind of like the golden boy of Lace, and everyone there loves him. He's just very good at what he does. So him and her are partners, or he's kind of like the person that shows her the ropes of everything. A homicide ends up happening on campus a little while after she's part of the Lace house. No matter how many people try to tell her that it doesn't have anything to do with the societies, she refuses to believe that, and she just dives deeper and she wants to solve the murder. That's not really spoiling anything because it's just so much more that ties into the societies and all that stuff. There's just a lot of crazy things that go on within the societies. You think it's just magic, but it just dives so much deeper into much worse things. It was pretty cool how all the societies had their own certain magic abilities. One of them was like shapeshifters, one of them like was this illusion-based society, and then there was like another one where it was definitely literature driven, and then one of them was able to do like teleportation or something like that. It was just a lot of random things. I rated this book 4 stars. I really loved the story building and the plot. The quick opinion of the book, I checked pure entertainment and not what I expected, because it really was not what I expected. It was better than what I was expecting. Some quotes that I loved were, it was this quote about the way Alex described Darlington. He had a way of distractedly brushing the brown hair back from his forehead that made you want to do it for him. Another quote was, his heart hurt for the wanting of someone. There was a lot of random quotes in the book that I feel were all across the board that I liked for certain reasons. I really liked seeing Alex develop as a character. She just had a really, really bad past. I wouldn't say she had a bad upbringing because she kind of like put her own self in the certain situations that she put herself in. Obviously, the ability of her being able to see grays did take a toll on her growing up for certain reasons, but you should read the book if you want to find out more about that. Some of my favorite things about the book was Alex's ability to see the grays, the dark academia concept of magic and the 8 societies in the Lace house. For some reason, I really freaking loved Darlington as a character. I don't know what it was about him, but I loved him as a character. This book also had a map in the book as well, and I also just love books that have maps. And I also thought it was pretty cool that the book was based at Yale, because there was many times where they mentioned structures and then I would look them up on the internet and those were actually real buildings. So I thought that was pretty cool. Next up is a book that I physically do have with me right now. And that is Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. When I tell you, I loved this book. I was so obsessed with it. Another late night reading of me staying up late to read it. I just love getting back into reading my romance. Bride was the first book that I had read getting back into romance, but this just made me realize how much I miss it so much. This book is about Jacob and Brianna. The summary I gave for the book honestly doesn't really do it justice, so I'm kind of just going to explain it in the best way I can because I feel like the plot is not all over the place, but it's just kind of hard to pinpoint exactly where to start. So Brianna just got out of a divorce and she's kind of like been in a slump. Her brother also has gone into kidney failure, so he's on dialysis and he needs a new kidney. Also, she's trying to be promoted at her job and this new guy comes in, Jacob, and they just get off on a really bad foot at her job because he's a new guy at her job and they just started out really bad. I think honestly it was just a form of miscommunication and her making assumptions about him. To kind of reconcile things, he writes her a letter and the letter kind of starts everything in the book. So he writes her this letter because that's kind of like his form of being able to communicate with people, because Jacob is someone who has really bad anxiety. So he writes her this letter and then she writes him one back, and then they just start communicating through letters for a while until they actually start talking in person. Because for a while they weren't talking in person at her job, they were just writing each other these letters, and then they both grew to love the letter writing, especially Brianna. She actually really started to look forward to the letters, and then they start fake dating. And I don't want to dive too deeply into why they start fake dating, but pretty much Jacob's brother is getting married to Jacob's ex. and Jacob was with this ex for like a long time. So to kind of get out of the heat of things, and he doesn't want any attention on him, and his family thinks that he's sad about it, he asks Brianna to be his fake girlfriend just during the wedding festivities, and then that kind of just blossoms into more, obviously, because the fake dating obviously never just ends in fake dating. Also, I forgot to mention that Jacob ends up giving Brianna's brother his kidney, so that's just a whole other thing that ties into their storyline. I rated this book 4.5 stars. I was gonna rate it 5 stars, but then there were some things about the book, mainly like the miscommunication, that kind of bothered me, because Jacob and Brianna, they both had their own specific issues that tied into their life and their past. Jacob with his anxiety and Brianna's complete fear of like being abandoned and not being loved and just being cheated on. I forgot to mention that her divorce happened because her husband cheated on her. So that was a big part of the book. There was a lot of miscommunication, but then again, even that small bit of miscommunication that bothered me, I totally understood why there was miscommunication, because I completely understand why Jacob and Brianna's brains were assuming those things and why they would just think those things randomly. But at the end of the day, just talk to each other and just explain how you feel. And it was even just like the smallest things where you can just say what you actually meant instead of letting them assume what you meant or just assuming what they think you mean. I hope I'm making sense when I say that. But this book was so freaking good. I definitely went through like a little bit of a reading depression after I finished it for like 2 days. The quick opinion that I checked off was one of the best books I've read. Pure entertainment, emotional, and hysterically funny. This book had me laughing out loud. There was so many funny parts of this book. I think you should read it and just know that I was cackling through most of this book. There was also so many quotes from this book. Like there were so many, I didn't even have a chance to put all of them in here. I ran out of room. Lily wrote at the top, there were so many. A quote that I loved said, "I had to wonder with a touch of awe and amusement if she had bewitched me." And that is Jacob talking about Brianna. Another quote that I loved that he said was, "I wouldn't be the same after this. All the women I'd even met and all the women I ever would fell away beneath her." There was also so many things that I loved in the book. Jacob Maddox being one of them. I love him so much. I love him as a book boyfriend. He was just so cute and thoughtful and genuine, and just the way he talked about Brianna and the way he felt about her and all the things he did for her, stepping out of his comfort zone and overcoming his anxiety for her. It was just so freaking cute. I loved him so much. I said that I loved how much I laughed. I also loved when they finally revealed how they really felt about each other. That scene is really cute. This book was so good that I think it made me want to go read more of her books. I have been having this book on my shelf for so long, so thank God I pulled it out of my TBR jar. So glad I read it, and it's just making me think she has so many other books out right now. She has Part of Your World and Just for the Summer. Those are the two that I really want to get. I want to get more of her books so bad, especially Part of Your World, because the characters show up in this book and I need their book right now. The sun is starting to go down, so I need to hurry up. I always do things at the wrong time, and now the dogs are barking. And the final book of this video is The Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix. This book was a horror book. I think this is the first horror book that I've ever read. I've read some thrillers, but I've never read like a horror or scary book. I don't know. I did like it. Will I say it's my favorite book or that I really loved it? Not really. I'm going to be completely honest. But I still really liked it because it kept me entertained and it kept me wanting to come back to it and read more. I realized that I never got a chance to finish writing out the journal entry for my book journal. So I'm gonna have to read some quotes off my phone that I like to type in my notes app before I underline them. But this book is about a support group for final girls. I'll just read you the synopsis, honestly. Lynette Tarkington is a real-life final girl who survived a massacre. For more than a decade, she's been meeting with 5 other final girls and their therapists in a support group for those who endured the unthinkable, working to put their lives back together. Then one woman misses a meeting and Lynette's worst fears are realized. Someone knows about the group and is determined to rip their lives apart again, piece by piece. But the thing about final girls is that no matter how bad the odds, how dark the night, how sharp the knife, they will never ever give up. But at the very beginning of the book, one of the women who's in the group named Adrian does not show up for one of the meetings. And this is even after the morning that there was already announced that there was a slaughter massacre at Adrian's like summer camp that she runs, and then they find out later that Adrian was actually killed in her own home. And Lynette immediately catches on that like something is wrong and she tries to escape, and then someone found all of her escape routes and messed them up. So that's how she knows that someone is legit after them. Another reason why she knows that they're coming after all of them is because of the fact that they killed Adrian, and then the fact that other random things start happening to all of the women, but none of them want to believe her. She's kind of like fighting her best to get all of them safe and keep all all of them safe and figure out who's doing this to them. That's pretty much the gist of it, or all that I feel I need to say, honestly. Lynette is someone who is very, very paranoid when it comes to life. She kind of like holds herself up in her apartment. She literally never ever really left her apartment. She literally only left her apartment when she genuinely needed to and for support group. And a lot of the times she did leave her apartment, it was because she was going to get things to make her apartment more safe to live in. Her best friend in the book was literally a plant, and she talked to the plant. At first I thought that was kind of weird, but then I kind of understand because she doesn't talk to anyone except for the support group girls once a week. I rated this book 3 stars because, like I said, it was good, but I read other thriller books, and even though this wasn't exactly a thriller, it kind of was a thriller in a sense. But then again, those books that I've read that kind of feel like the kind of same thing as this book, I was definitely more drawn to them and more pulled to them. And there were some times where I felt like I was kind of not bored, because I never felt bored reading it, but I just didn't feel that super big pull. That's why I rated it 3 stars. But the book was still really good and I liked reading it. I'm realizing that I don't even really think I have a lot of favorite quotes from this book. I did have some mentioned. One of them was, sometimes you don't know why you're doing anything anymore, so you just keep moving even though you're out of options. And then another one I liked was, there's more to life than staying alive. And that's kind of like an important quote in the book, because one of the biggest things about Lynette was that her biggest thing was staying alive, and everything she did was stay alive, and there's more to life than staying alive, and that's what she realized. As I was reading the book, I realized that a lot of the characters are kind of based off very famous scary movies and scary movie franchises. Like, a lot of women connected to each one. For example, Chainsaw Massacre and Nightmare on Elm Street and Scream. So I thought that was pretty cool. That is the last book I'm going to talk about for the books that I actually did read for my fall TBR. Right now I am reading Mile High, and if you remember, this was one of the books that I pulled from the jar, but I'm going to include this into the winter pile because I am reading most of it in December, and I consider that part of winter. So if you remember from the TBR jar video, the books I pulled were The Ninth House, Yours Truly, The Final Girl Support Group, Mile High, and Funny Story. So unfortunately, the only book that I am not going to read part of the fall TBR or for a while anymore is Funny Story, because I don't know if I want to read that for the winter. So I am going to put Funny Story back into the TBR jar. Getting in my head a little bit that I didn't finish my fall TBR, but I'm totally okay with that because the amount of books that I actually did end up reading this fall were, I consider, a lot, especially with the fact that I was in a reading slump. But don't worry, I have a really big feeling that Funny Story is going to be read very soon, because I do want to read this eventually. Because in total I ended up reading 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Well, actually, I ended up reading 9 books because I technically count both of these. And I'm halfway through Mile High. So that is 9 books in total for the fall, which I am so proud of, because there was a point where I wasn't reading at all. I would go over a month without even touching a book. So either way, I am very proud of those 9 books. And if you remember and think about it, besides the Hunger Games, I started reading my actual fall TBR pretty late into the season. It was like mid-October. So all of September, I didn't even read any of my actual fall TBR. So honestly, this seems like a lot to me. And I'm gonna take this one off. And then 3 of the books I don't even have with me right now. Once again, I'm very happy with what I ended up reading, and all the books that I did read, I really did like. I feel like I have rambled on so much in this video, so I think I'm going to finally end it here. Like I was saying in the beginning, if you are a new person here, I'm so happy that you're here. You're so welcome here, and you should definitely comment. I'll comment back. I just love all the support. Just thank you so much for watching, especially if you're still here right now. All of my socials are linked in the description below, of course, and you should like, comment, and subscribe if you would like, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!